A year ago, if you asked most engineers what they used for AI-assisted coding, the answer was Cursor, Windsurf, or Copilot. Claude Code was a research preview that most people dismissed as a chatbot with terminal access. Today, 3 independent surveys all say the same thing. Claude Code is the most used, most loved AI coding tool among experienced engineers. And the part that caught my attention is that the more senior the engineer, the more likely they are to prefer it. Staff plus engineers, directors, the people who are the hardest to impress, they're adopting it at nearly twice the rate of everyone else. So what changed? And why are the engineers who should be the most skeptical the ones leading this shift? That's the topic on today's Tech Thaumaturge. 12 months ago, the AI coding landscape looked completely different. If you were using AI to write code, you were probably in Cursor or Windsurf or GitHub Copilot, and they had the enterprise market. Claude Code had just launched as a research preview in February of 2025, a terminal tool that most people dismissed as a chatbot with file access. Fast forward to today, the Pragmatic Engineer survey of 906 experienced engineers found that Claude Code is now the most beloved AI coding tool at 46%, Cursor at 19%, and GitHub Copilot at 9%. JetBrains ran their own survey of over 10,000 developers and found Claude Code has the highest satisfaction score on the market, 91% CSAT, 54 NPS. It went from 0 to 4% of all public GitHub commits in 13 months, with projections to hit 20% by the end of the year. Something shifted. Let me walk you through exactly what. The competition stumbled. Part of the story is about what happened to the alternatives. Windsurf, which was one of the most popular AI coding tools in 2025, effectively ceased to exist. OpenAI announced a $3 billion acquisition in May of 25. Then the deal fell apart in July because of a dispute between Microsoft and OpenAI over who would own the intellectual property. The CEO and co-founder got hired by Google DeepMind. Google paid $2.4 billion to license the technology. Cognition, the company behind Devon, acquired the remaining product and team. One of the top 3 AI coding tools got split 3 ways and disappeared. Then Cursor shot itself in the foot. In June of 25, right as Claude Code was gaining momentum, Cursor switched from a request-based to a credit-based pricing. Users reported costs jumping from $28 to $500 a month overnight. The CEO had to publicly apologize on Reddit on July 4th. Later that year, a Cursor update corrupted chat histories. In March of 26, they confirmed a bug where Cursor was silently reverting user changes. These are not the kinds of problems engineers tolerate. None of these means Cursor is a bad tool. It isn't. I still use it from time to time. But when your 2 main competitors stumble at the exact moment a new option is hitting its stride, engineers notice. The technical reasons that engineers care about. Well, this is the part that matters most if you're an engineer evaluating these tools. Claude Code is terminal native. That sounds like a small detail, but it changes the fundamental interaction model. Cursor and Copilot operate on a suggestion paradigm. You write code, they suggest completions. You accept or reject. Claude Code operates on a delegation paradigm. You describe what you want, and it plans, executes, runs, and tests, reads errors, course corrects, and loops back until the test is done. Cursor can do that too, but it's a different paradigm of how it's designed. The context window is a real differentiator. Claude Code on Opus 4.6 has a 1 million token context window. In practical terms, that's enough to hold an entire code base. Independent testing from MorphLM found that Cursor's effective context window is somewhere between 70,000 and 120,000 tokens after internal truncation. When you're doing a jot migration that touches 23 files across your project, that gap matters. Claude Code handled it with what a tester described as a coherent architectural vision. Cursor's Composer struggled once it got past 10 files. Token efficiency compounds that advantage. The same independent tests that showed Claude Code used 5.5 times fewer tokens than Cursor for identical tasks. Multi-file refactoring, feature implementation, test generation, bug investigation, across every category, Claude Code completed the work in fewer iterations with less compute. Then there's MCP, Model Context Protocol. It is an open standard that Anthropic launched in 2024 and has since been adopted by OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, and AWS. It lets your coding agent connect to databases, ticket systems, Slack, internal APIs, anything with an MCP server. Both Cursor and Claude Code support it now, but Claude Code's integration is deeper. Deferred tool loading, per agent MCP configs, no hard cap on connected tools, while Cursor has a 40 tool limit. And the extensibility stack goes well beyond what the alternatives offer. Claude Code has 5 layers. Claude.md files for persistent project instructions, skills for reusable web flows, hooks for deterministic automation at lifecycle events, plugins that bundle everything together, and sub-agents that get their own isolated context windows. Cursor has cursor rules. Copilot has a single instructions file. The gap in customization depth is significant for engineers who want their tools to match how they actually work. What makes this moment different from typical tool hype is who's talking about it. Andrej Karpathy went from 80% manual coding to 80% agent coding in a matter of weeks. He called it disorienting because code that used to be a point of pride is now free and instant. Ryan Dahl, the creator of Node.js, posted, "The era of humans writing code is over. Disturbing for those of us who identify as software engineers, but no less true." Simon Wilson, co-creator of Django, called Claude Code launch the most impactful event of 2025 and said it's poorly named because it's not purely a coding tool, it's a tool for general computer automation. Kent Beck, who literally invented test-driven development 52 years into his career, said he's re-energized by AI agents and that test-driven development is a superpower when working with them. Gary Tan, CEO of Y Combinator, open sourced his Claude Code setup. It hit 10,000 GitHub stars in 48 hours. He claims 600,000 lines of production code in 60 days, part-time while running a Y Combinator. These aren't influencers chasing engagement. These are people who built the frameworks and languages engineers use every day. The enterprise adoption is equally telling. Stripe built a system called Minions that ships 1,300 pull requests per week with zero human written code. They worked with Anthropic to produce a signed enterprise binary deployed to 1,370 engineers. They completed a 10,000 line code migration in 4 days. Microsoft, the company that sells GitHub Copilot, has internally adopted Claude Code across major engineering teams. Engineers were asked to compare the two tools and provide feedback. The New York Stock Exchange CTO said they're rewiring our engineering process with Claude Code, building agents that take instructions from a Jira ticket all the way to committed code. Shopify CEO made AI usage part of performance reviews. Teams have to demonstrate why they can't use AI before requesting additional headcount to get new hires. Here's the data point that I think tells the real story. The Pragmatic Engineer survey found that the more senior the engineer, the more likely they prefer Claude Code. Staff plus engineers show a 63.5% agent adoption. Why? Senior engineers already live in the terminal. They value autonomy and tools that match how they think. They've spent years building mental models of complex systems, and Claude Code lets them operate at a level of those mental models instead of getting bogged down by the syntax. The Vercel CTO put it well. His new primary job is to tell AI what it did wrong. And in doing so, he's learning Bash, file systems, Postgres wire protocol, and SQLite deeper than he ever would have otherwise. If you're an engineer currently on Cursor or Copilot and you want to try Claude Code, here's how to start doing it without disrupting your workflow. First, don't replace your editor. The most common pattern among senior engineers is Cursor or their preferred editor for daily line-by-line work, plus Claude Code in a separate terminal for complex tasks, refactoring, debugging, architecture, multi-line changes. Start there. Second, set up your Claude.md first. This is the file that gives Claude Code context about your project, coding standards, architecture decisions, directory structure. A good Claude.md file is the difference between generic output and code that actually fits your code base. Third, give it a real task, not a test. Pick something that's been sitting in your backlog because it touches too many files or requires too much context. A dependency migration across 15 files, or a test suite for an untested module. That's where the difference shows up. Fourth, use the checkpoint system. Claude Code snapshots your files before every edit. If something goes wrong, escape, reverts instantly. The safety net is built in. Now, to be perfectly honest about something, Claude Code is not perfect. Karpathy calls AI agents eager but sloppy junior engineers. Simon Wilson flagged real security concerns around prompt injection. A staff engineer at Sanity wrote that the first attempt will be 95% garbage, and then it usually takes 3 tries. This is not magic, but the trajectory is clear. The tool went from research preview to 4% of all GitHub commits in 13 months. The most experienced engineers in the industry are not just using it, they're publicly reorganizing their workflows around it. The survey data from 3 independent sources all point to the same direction. I mentioned this in my last video, but Boris Cherny, the creator of Claude Code, said something on Lenny's podcast that stuck with me. I have never enjoyed coding as much as I do today because I don't have to deal with all the minutiae. A tool that makes senior engineers more productive and more engaged is a rare combination. If you've been on the fence, the data says it's worth your time to find out for yourself. I'm curious where you fall in this. Are you already using Claude Code? Are you still using Cursor? Are you running both? Drop it in the comments. I'm especially interested if engineers at the same company disagree on which tool is better.